All this Dateline NBC special did was make the state's timeline look less possible, because now they're trying to say that somebody sat in a chair and there were more extensive wounds to Ethan than we were originally told by official sources. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer, everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. The Dateline NBC special for the Idaho student murder case, that one came out on Friday, May the 9th. I went live and did a live reaction. I couldn't show it on the screen, but I sat there and play-by-play reacted to everything that was going on. I was able to show a couple of things, but because of copyright and just not wanting to jeopardize my channel to show anything further than I already did, I wasn't able to show too much, but I showed you guys a couple of steal things. We listened to the audio for the car that's like Tokyo drifting around the corner. So now we're going to go and we're going to talk about just the highlights, just the information. Now, I think in this video, because there's a lot to talk about here, I'm going to keep it to the Dateline timeline. I don't know if I have every single date on this. Again, I went back and listened to my live reaction and I took notes, and I didn't go and get information from anyone else because I don't want their information to be incorrect. And then I'm out here repeating it and it's incorrect timeline information. So if I missed something, then by the time I get the chance to watch the Dateline special itself again, if I notice that I missed a date, or if you guys notice that I missed a date, you can let me know down in the comments, and I will go back and correct it after I rewatch the special itself. Again, this is the summary from my reaction video where I watched it live and gave a live narration of what was happening at the time. Now, there's a lot of details. We're going to go a bit further into the details in a separate video, I think. So for right now, we're going to stick to, again, the timeline. They gave us a timeline from June 25th of 2022, whenever Bryan Kohberger actually drove away from Pennsylvania and headed towards WSU, all the way down to 12:29, right before midnight. Now, again, I don't know how the hell they got their hands on this information. I know for a fact, and I'm just going to repeat the things that I know personally, and then I'm going to give you what I'm thinking is happening here. Most of you guys already know this, but Steve Goncalves, Kaylee Goncalves' father, has already admitted well over a year ago that he had access to footage that he claimed debunked the audio on Linda Lane, because what he was hearing on his official evidence footage, there were things that were not matching. Like the fact that we hear screaming and all this stuff at like the exact time of 1:56 that Kaylee and Maddie actually did get dropped off. If they would have seen something that would have caused that sort of just exaggerated utterance, okay, then maybe he would have already said something, but they haven't. They haven't mentioned that on the camera as they're seeing the two girls actually get home, that they're being viciously attacked to where the scream that we hear on Linda Lane would have actually happened. Nay. Instead, we've been told that they watched the girls walk into the house and then they took Murphy to go to the bathroom. That's the complete opposite of what we were hearing at that time. So when it comes to that, I feel like there are certain things that Steve Goncalves does have access to when it comes to maybe how bad the injuries were. He was told certain things from the coroner, but they were told to him before the gag order. What we've come to realize is that Steve Goncalves hasn't really been told any new information for a really long time. And what was interesting is that he did a round of interviews right before this actually posted, and pretty much everything that he was alluding to in the 4 interviews that I watched anyway, all of that's being said in this. So it's interesting that it's sort of like a, like a little teaser, like a little, let's see how everyone's going to react to this information before Dateline dropped their episode. But then they didn't actually do a new interview with the Goncalveses. They threw like an old clip in there for maybe 2.7 seconds and then just completely walked away from them altogether. But there's a lot of bloom blum in this. So some of me is maybe wondering if this is what Shannon Gray, the Goncalves' attorney, maybe reached out to Bloom Blum about, because the Goncalveses aren't in it, but Bloom Blum is, and he's pushing the same narrative that Steve Goncalves is out here literally saying in the camera to several different cameras, actually. So it's just really interesting because I think that maybe if that's true, then there were maybe a couple of things that maybe Steve Goncalves heard incorrectly and maybe repeated incorrectly when it came to the timeline. There was one very specific thing that I was waiting to hear because of everything that Steve was saying, but I didn't hear it. I heard something, but it sounds again as if Steve got those dates maybe messed up, maybe misconstrued, maybe he misunderstood. I don't know. But when it comes to where this information came from, again, Steve Goncalves definitely has already proven to us that he's had access to 1112 King Road's cameras. But when it comes to who Kohberger was calling that morning before he took the selfie, when it comes to the pictures that are apparently on his phone and the dates and what they are, there's no way that Steve Goncalves would have that information. That's phone download, forensic phone download type information. And then the call logs aren't. The call logs would be coming literally from the warrant that was served to AT&T. But it's still interesting because during the entire Dateline special, they're showing a Verizon phone. Now, I'm going to pop this up on the screen. This is a sealed document for a Verizon phone from the very beginning of the case. We've talked about this. There was a whole nother phone number that was out there for Bryan on the WSU directory that did not match the phone that all of the warrants were for, but the August traffic stop proved that he was already using the phone in the case in August. So I don't know why they ended up getting the Verizon warrant, unless they only did it in order to prove that that phone was no longer active because it was part of the public information available about Bryan Kohberger at the time. But there's been nothing else from Verizon when it comes to him filed, sealed, or not. So again, I'm not really quite sure why they're showing the Verizon phone the entire time, because even when they start off on 6/25 of 22 of him leaving Pennsylvania to drive down to WSU, they're stating that it's because he took photos. Well, then they have 6/30 of 22, they have more photos, but this time it's actually at the WSU apartment complex. So that's a 5-day drive. And remember, him and his dad are the ones who drove down there because we have the neighbor who came out and ended up actually inviting Bryan over to the pool party. And the pool party is actually the next in their timeline after showing that he's actually gotten to WSU. They have 7/9/22 as the Grove pool party. Now, I know that this pool party has been a topic here on this channel before because Reverend Donna Serafina, she's a psychic here on YouTube. I don't put a lot of stance into that stuff. I do listen to it if it sounds like it's legitimate. I know the government has us using remote viewing and all kinds of things, so I don't put too much aside when it comes to what she does, because what she does to me is more remote viewing than psychic ability. That's just me and how I'm taking what she does. But I say that to say this. There was a pool party in what Donna Serafina saw when it came to Kaylee and possibilities, but that pool party and this pool party are not the same pool party. And the reason why we know that is because Steve Goncalves, there's a TikToker named Brat Norton, Brat Norton, and she had some sort of, investigative relationship with Steve, and she was going back and forth between Steve and Howard Bloomblum. Basically, she was like the little middleman. And what Steve ended up telling her in these text messages that she came out and showed everyone is that they had discussed the pool party, and Steve already had known about the Grove, but he also knew already that it was not the same. One was outside, one was inside, both in Moscow, but not the same pool party. So whenever they showed this one, we ended up actually being introduced to like a new character. Quite a few different new characters, or at least some faces, came out in this episode. We meet Holly. Holly is this gorgeous freaking chick who apparently Bryan met at the pool party, and they started talking about hiking and whatnot. So she hands Bryan Kohberger her phone, and he puts his number in her phone. Then she takes her phone and she instantly texts him her name so that he has her number. So then there's a guy at the pool party that's jealous of Bryan because he'd been wanting to get with that chick, and now this dude just like swooped in and she got his number. Now, I do find it interesting that she says that she felt obligated to do so, but I roll my eyes because is that her story from the beginning? Is that really how she felt whenever all of this happened? Or is that just what she's telling the camera because of how this guy's being portrayed to the media and she doesn't want to look like she's being like nice about him? I wonder about those things because you never really know what someone is going to say about somebody before the bad actually starts reflecting. So again, did you really feel obligated, Holly? Or are you just saying that now because you're being asked to talk about this guy who's accused of all these horrible things and you don't want to admit that maybe you did like him at the time? I mean, they ended up not doing anything. They ended up not even like going on a hike or doing anything, but she said it was no negative reason. It was just life. She got busy. So were you really obligated? Or was it just like a thing and maybe you were a little bit, drinking a little bit at the party and maybe y'all had something in common, but then it was just a party connect and then it went away? It could just be something innocent. But the fact that she used the word obligated has all kinds of people thinking all kinds of things and not stopping and thinking, but is that how you felt at the time for real? Because you really just never know. Now, Howard Bloomblum had told us about two blondes in black bikinis that he had apparently gotten the numbers of, but then he never contacted them. Well, the story that Dateline says is that after the Holly situation, that there were apparently two girls in bikinis sitting at the pool, but one of them was married. And that apparently one of them, the one who's not married, wanted him, Bryan, to leave them alone. So the non-married friend went to go try to get the husband of her friend to make Bryan stop. And Bryan apparently just like ignored that dude and kept getting closer to them and blah, blah, blah. That's the story they're telling at this moment. But then again, I stopped and I thought this. If you were at a pool party, you men, your husbands out there, okay? Not even husbands, just you with a chick at a pool party and y'all are in a relationship, okay? If you and your girl were at a pool party with her friend and some dude just kept bothering them over and over and over again, and after you've already told him to stop, he doesn't stop and he gets closer and they're like, oh my God, go away. Would it not eventually come to fisticuffs? Was there a fight that happened at the pool party? No? Well, then I don't believe that story. I'm sorry. You're not going to sit there and try to tell me that Bryan didn't listen to the husband and just kept on getting closer to this guy's wife and his wife's friend and nothing happened. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't believe that. We also know from Howard Bloomblum, that he actually got these girls' numbers. So are they only trying to say now that Bryan Kohberger was like bothering them and they were wanting him to go away because now the truth about maybe married lady giving homeboy her number came out into the public? Because we have to think about that too if these are the same bikini clad little pool goers. I'm just saying. So then they jump from July the 9th, 2022, all the way to August 16th, 2022. They just jump all the way, nothing in the middle. I have it in here as prior to 5:19 p.m. because I did not hear the time, or at least I didn't repeat the time they said that he searched Ted Bundy with his professor's name and then downloaded the paper that his professor wrote about Ted Bundy and how he misspelled Bundy as H7NDY. I don't have the time for that. All I know is that after that, they mentioned that on the exact same day, there's like a group picture of Dylan and Bethany, and I think all of the girls actually are like in the photo. I think it's all 5 girls are in the photo. And that was around 5:19 p.m. that same day of August the 16th. So again, I don't remember, but I think it was like in the dark time hours, like in the AM. But this is kind of crazy how they're doing this, because if this was a professor that Bryan had at the actual time, then why is it so like far-fetched and something to consider evidence against him that he's looking up a paper that his own professor wrote on a subject that he's in school to study? I don't understand the problem. I don't know why they're trying to act like that's such a big deal. Now, I'm not going to sit here. I'll just preface this now in case like y'all, some of you want to come in here and just be stupid. There's quite a few things in here that, if true about Bryan, I'm not okay with. It doesn't mean that I believe that he's guilty because that part hasn't come out yet. But there are a couple things in here that I'm just not okay with. But trying to use him looking up his professor and a subject that his professor wrote about, and then he physically downloads the paper written by the professor to try to turn that into something is just as stupid as using his DeSales homework assignment. Sorry, not sorry. This is dumb. And then, of course, after 8/16, they would have August 21st of 2022, where we have the infamous sealed traffic stop from 6 minutes away from King Road. Again, I don't know what the point of this is, because the only thing that they're supposed to be doing, according to the state's own words, is using his traffic stop for identification purposes only. For him being Bryan Kohberger, for his address, for his cell phone, and for the make and model of his vehicle. Judge Hippler then walked in with an order regarding something. I don't remember even what the order was for. It was probably the self-authenticating records list, maybe, or maybe it was the expert witness. I don't honestly remember. But he then came out and tried to say that this was being inputted into evidence for something other than what the state has already said regarding the 404 rules. We've gone over the rules, and they have to literally tell you if they're trying to implement this to show motive, planning, all of those things. And that's not what the state is doing. The judge then, again, in this order, came out and said, that's exactly what this is in here for. But that's not freaking true. The judge is putting a stipulation and a wording label on this that the state has not. And the state has come out and said what it's supposed to be for several times. So for them to keep their story and then the judge to come out with something completely different, I don't know how that hasn't been corrected yet. But the reason why they put this in here, and granted, I don't know why he would look this up. I'm sure, again, it has something to probably do with his cases that he's looking at for his schooling, I guess. 5 days after the August 21st traffic stop, he searched, when can a cop detain you? But that's all it was. There wasn't anything specific. Detain you for what? Detain you for what? For not wearing your seatbelt and asking the cop how he felt about people lying to him about not wearing their seatbelt? You can't get arrested for that. Now, I so expected this story to pop up, but I'm really glad that now I have a better clarification of this story, because this has been something that we've been hearing about in this case for a super, super, super long time, but no one ever showed any proof of the negative aspects of this story. Let me explain. So for a long time now, there's been a story going around that a neighbor, someone who lived near Bryan, someone who worked with him, went to school with him, one of those, felt like somebody had broken into her apartment. Stuff was moved around. She felt really uncomfortable. So she decided to ask Bryan Kohberger to come in and put some security cameras and stuff up in her apartment. Well, that story got twisted by Ashley Banfeld and Nancy Disgrace, and they started acting as if, oh, she was suspicious that it was Bryan. She started thinking that maybe it was him that did all this in order to get her to ask him to come into her apartment so that he could just fake like she needed help, but it was really him going and rummaging through her underwear drawer. Like, it was a bunch of cray-cray. Okay, now I don't know, again, if everything that we're getting from this Dateline is true when it comes to this, because, again, we need to remember that this girl that's being talked about in this is not talking to Dateline. And honestly, it's probably one of two reasons. Either she really just doesn't want to because it's coming out that she had a crush on Bryan Kohberger and was rejected, and now the entire world knows she was rejected. That's freaking humiliating. But the second option is that maybe she's a character witness. I don't know if for the state or for the defense, but she could be being held under the gag order because she's going to be testifying at the trial. Not only are they saying that she had some sort of romantic feelings for Bryan Kohberger, but that whenever she apparently approached him about it, he rejected her. He pulled away from her. Well, after this, because this is important here. This is important here. After Bryan rejected her, she then had this thing happen where she was baking a cake and it wasn't in the oven whenever she came home. It was in the microwave instead of in the oven where she left it. Her cosmetics and certain other things were apparently organized in a different way than she had left them. And she claims a watch and another item of hers that Bryan knew about were also missing. So whenever this situation apparently happened and she felt like somebody had been in her house moving her stuff around, she called who? She called the man who rejected her. She called Bryan, and he apparently spent the night with her over at her apartment. Now, Bloomblum is claiming nothing happened, but he stayed with her because she didn't feel safe. So at this point, she's not suspicious of him of literally anything. The way that they're giving the story is just as I told it. She was rejected by him. Something happened at her apartment. Here comes the guy that rejected her. Like, she's trying to get him to spend some time with her to maybe, I don't know, change his mind? You just never know. Okay? Only after he has spent the night at her apartment, after the whole moved cake situation, does she apparently start feeling suspicious of him. But then after she starts feeling suspicious of him, she then calls him back to her apartment because she can't figure out how to get the security system to work with the app on her phone. I'm sorry. You don't call the guy over that you're scared is the reason why you're in the predicament that you're in to help you. Okay? That would be just as ignorant as me asking my ex to help me put up a security system. That's stupid. Now, granted, people do stupid things. So could it be true? Sure. It could definitely be true. Do I feel like it's true? No. No, not at all. Because again, that doesn't make any sense. You're only coming out and saying this stuff now because of what? Did you really feel suspicious of him? Or because you're not actually talking to anybody? Is this just a bunch of made up stuff from people that maybe have connections to this girl, but she's not coming out and saying anything because maybe she legally can't? So she can't correct the record. She can't come out here and be like, I wasn't suspicious of him of anything. Where did that come from? Or she can't come out and be like, damn straight I was suspicious of him, but it wasn't until after he put the cameras in my apartment that it started. Because that's a possibility too. Hopefully we find out at trial. They showed this woman's face and then told the entire world that she was rejected by him. I feel really bad for her, honestly, regardless. So then they jump from 9/10, 20 days forward to 9/30 of 22. And apparently at 1 o'clock in the morning, he types into Google, sociopathic traits in college students. Now, this Dr. Gary guy who goes over on Chris McDonough's channel is on here. And honestly, I don't know how they're getting away with showing him stuff. They are literally saying in this that they're showing this Gary guy the pictures that Bryan has on his phone that they have access to. I don't understand how that's happening in a gag order, but I don't know how any of this is happening in a gag order, so let's just keep going. He tries to say that this is him being self-aware. I'm sorry, Mr. Doctor Man. Are you not also self-aware of the fact that sociopaths don't give a damn if they're sociopaths? So why in the world would he be looking up traits of one? They don't care enough to do the Googling, sir. And then sometime in early October, again, I don't have the exact date, but the next little timeline thing is 10/9. So, that first week or so, they claim that he's browsing WSU and University of Idaho women online. Okay, you mean on a dating app? He was browsing them on a dating app? I mean, tell me what college guy isn't browsing college chicks at 2-something in the freaking morning? I don't see the problem. Now again, the next date is 10/9 of 22, and this is where I come up with my first issue. And I understand that there's a lot of people that think that this could be for purposes for his education, for his schooling. I don't know. All I know is that I'm not okay with someone who could be getting aroused by corn that involves people that are having things done to them while they are unconscious. Okay? I don't like that. I don't know the context in which this stuff is being looked at. Regular old schmegular corn, have at it, broski. Okay? But this kind of stuff I can't get behind. And some people, again, were saying, oh, it's because of his college courses, blah, blah, blah. We don't really know that. Just because we have issues with the evidence doesn't mean this guy might not have some things that we just might not like. We're not going to sit here and act like every little thing is full of shit, because not every little thing is full of shit, okay? We need to remember that. What we're going off of right now is the physical actual evidence at hand. And again, I know this is just with Dateline. But if this comes out to be an actual factual situation, I'm not going to be okay with that. It doesn't mean that he's guilty, because if he's not, again, at the location of the crime, at the time the crime happened, then it really doesn't matter how much of this stuff that he looks at. It doesn't mean he's the guy that did it. But it's not A-okay. I think it's disgusting. And there's definitely something wrong with people who get their jollies off to that kind of shit. But it's also kind of interesting that they're trying to push that, because one of the very first things that we were told was that there was no SA. So I don't know why they're trying to push that angle here after what they've already told us. I don't know. Okay, so then it mentions how 5 days after the Pullman, Washington pullover, the one that we've actually watched, and the female officer was talking to him, that's actually where we hear the car come back from dispatch as a completely different car. So they say that 5 days after the Pullman pullover, he then Googled, can psychopaths behave pro-socially? I mean, honestly, it sounds like when it comes to the sociopath and the psychopath thing, that it's not any sort of self-awareness. Again, in my opinion, this literally could be for an assignment, something that he's looking up. Again, this is just one Google search. This isn't the maybe plethora of surrounding Google searches that he would have been doing if this was a class assignment. So the fact that they're cherry picking things and we're not getting the full context, that's an issue. They also said that before the crime, so before November 1st of 2022, that he Googled his own name 14 times. Do you know why that doesn't matter to me? A, it's before the crime, so who gives a shit? And B, hello, that's like literally what my sponsor tells my people to do so that they can see just how worth it Aura actually is. Now, this is not a sponsored video, but whenever I do talk about my sponsor, it's a VPN. It helps you protect your credit. It helps you protect your identity. It helps you protect your children's identity. They literally say, go to Google and type your name in. Let people see the results, because all of this bullshit from these disgusting brokerage data boo-boo sites is going to pop up with your name, people that might be related to you, your birthday, possible cell phone numbers, your freaking location, okay? Aura literally tells people to Google themselves so that they can see the reason why Aura exists. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger searching his own name. What am I supposed to think about that? When again, it was before the crimes, and that's literally something that I tell my people to do in almost every single sponsored video for like over a year now. Now they start mentioning how on 11/11, he stops using his debit card, starts using cash at the ATM. Now, again, I'm not really quite sure how that works because none of the banks, and I do use several banks, none of the banks that I use has a way to withdraw money from the ATM without your physical card. I don't know how the bank that he has works. I have no clue. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But a lot of people do believe that it's a big possibility that he was able to withdraw money with his app, that maybe something happened with the debit card, and that maybe in waiting for it to be replaced, maybe he felt like this was just easier to maybe use his phone to pay for stuff. I know people who carry no physical anything. Everything is on their phone. If they can't tap their phone to pay for something, they don't go to that store. They literally keep everything on their phone. I mean, obviously they can pop something open, I guess like Google Pay. Is that still a thing? I know that a long time ago I used Google Pay, and like at Walmart, if it was linked, you would open like this almost like QR code thing that they would scan for your Google Pay to like work for whatever you had attached to your wallet. I know there's a bunch of stuff like that out there now. I have no idea how it works for Apple Pay. I'm not an iPhone person, but neither was Bryan, because the phone in question here was an Android, which for some reason we keep forgetting. Now, at the same time that this is apparently going on, and I say apparently, we have this in the documents. We've been told this already in, I believe, the expert documents. It's very, very recently we got this information. They claim that when it came to his school computer, that Bryan was trying to use anti-forensic means in order to like clean it. I don't understand that. And I say that because I don't understand how he would have had any sort of admin access to be able to do anything like that. That's way different than going into your browser and clearing your history. That's a whole nother thing they're talking about here with the way that they're at least describing it. So how did he do that on his school computer? He wouldn't have had admin access. All of these school computers, just like the way that my work laptop is, I'm basically breaking into a wall to break into a wall to break into a wall to break into a wall. I have no admin access. I can't even change the background image on my freaking laptop, okay? Because it's so secure. Anything that's remoted in because of all these hackers and all these breaks and data breaches, everything is really just secure. He probably had some sort of authenticator or something like that too. Again, that's just how I feel like it probably worked. But for him to have been able to have gone in and done anything forensically, he would have had to have like broken through permissions. And unless there's a way to do that without WSU's IT department being like alerted, I don't see how he could have done that. Now, again, I don't know anything about hacking. I could do computer stuff to a certain extent, but anything crazy like that, I have no idea. So it could be possible because I don't know. My education doesn't put me to a realm where I know that for sure. But I know that there are things on those computers and certain accesses you don't have access to. Certain things you just don't have access to. So I don't know. So now we're finally at 11/13. Now, when it comes to the selfie picture, they're saying that starting at around like 6:17 in the morning, he starts calling his parents. Well, with the timeline difference, it's definitely later on in the day for them. So that could be why he's calling them early in the morning, and it could be very normal for him to do so. Like I mentioned in my live reaction, I don't talk to people on a daily basis, family or freaking not, okay? I don't text and talk to people on a daily basis, but so many people do. So many people talk to their family and their friends on the phone, on FaceTime, and text messages. It's literally from eye open to eye shut, it's constant contact with people. Some people just have constant contact with their family. So him calling them, again, this is just the one day. This could be extremely normal, and they're just giving it to us for this one day to make it look bad. But I don't understand how the state doesn't seem to honestly give a crap at all that Bethany and Dylan were talking to their family early in the morning where the bodies actually were found. But him talking to his parents before taking a selfie is supposed to be bad. I don't understand that. But what some people are saying is that we're the ones being hypocritical because we don't have an issue with the fact that he's calling his parents 3 times that morning, blah, 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 but we have an issue with Bethany and Dylan. There's a huge difference there, okay? Again, Bethany and Dylan were where the bodies were found. Bethany and Dylan were in a home for 8 hours, and they had already, or at least Dylan had already physically with her eyeballs, as we know as of now, saw Xana in the 4 o'clock hour on the ground and chose to just go on about life. Admitted to the other roommate, and the other roommate admits back that they're freaking out and they're scared and they don't know what's going on, but no one does anything for 8 hours. So yeah, there's a huge difference between somebody who's being accused of something and 2 people that we know for a damn fact were in that house in the way that they behaved, okay? So, unless there was something going on in the conversation between Bryan and his parents about the crime that took place, I don't give a damn about those phone calls. But I want to know if something about the crime that took place was discussed with Bethany and Dylan's parents before the 911 call was made, because that's important. Now, I have mentioned on this channel before, and several people at this point have told me that they've seen this post too. Someone came out and said that when it comes to that selfie photo, that he was actually taking a photo for his mom to show her that he was able to button that top button. And honestly, this sort of has more stance now that we're being told he talked to his parents 3 separate times that morning. It tracks. So now they're also trying to tell us that between that 9 and 9:30 hour that he was close by to the crime scene. Now this is one of the pieces of the self-authenticating evidence or whatever they're trying to submit when it comes to the white Hyundai Elantra that I just don't believe right now. And there's a reason, okay? I don't believe it because that's the daylight hour. It is nice and shiny at 9 something in the freaking morning, okay? So you're trying to tell me that you've got a car going 95 south in an area that already has been told to us to have over 20,000 vehicles that match the description. But you're not telling us that this car has his license plate. You're not telling us that it was caught on camera with the license plate. You're not telling us that you were able to see that it was actually Bryan driving the vehicle because it's daytime. You're just telling us that a vehicle that fits the description of 20,000+ other vehicles was driving on 95 South at the time that you want him to be in the area. But you're not showing us the footage. You're not showing us a still shot. And in the documents, again, you're not saying that you can see the plate. So is it really him? Or is it just a car that happens to be driving south on 95? That's one of so many that it helps your narrative fit for you. I need real proof on that. So now we're going to get to a couple of things that are questionable. I'm going to admit that they're questionable, but I also have questions about these things at the exact same time. Now, on 11/15, he apparently goes to buy a knife in a sheath. And he starts the buy now process, begins to check out, but before he finishes checking out, he exits. I have a problem with that. That is a huge issue for me. Sorry, not sorry. That's like a day and a half after. Now, just like with a couple of these other things that he apparently was doing and looking up, I could easily say this is 11/15, so it's 2 days after the murder. He has a connection with Pullman Police Department, again, because of the fact that he's a TA at WSU for the criminology department. There is a slight chance, we're not going to pretend like this isn't a possibility. There is a slight chance that he might have heard about this and had heard about it from people who might have actually heard information about the case, because 2 days in a 10-mile period, oh yeah, word's getting around, things are being discussed, okay? And on top of that, like I said, there is a connection between the Pullman Police Department and the WSU criminology classes that he was taking. So there's a possibility that information was going back and forth because the departments were so close. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it is a possibility. But if you take away the fact that he was a criminology TA, that part right there, yeah, I don't like it. And I think they said this was around like 4:34 in the morning. So that in itself was also just a little bit, if you feel that way about it. Now they're claiming that the very first time that it shows that Kohberger even searched the crime was 11:16 at 9:16 in the morning. This is where I started thinking that Steve had access to whatever the hell Dateline was going to be putting out here, but he came out and he repeated some information incorrectly. What I was expecting out of everything that we had already heard come out of Steve's mouth being put in this damn special, what I was expecting at this point, because of all the similarities, was that he searched something about King Road murders or murders in Moscow or homicide in Moscow, Idaho before the 911 call, because Steve kept saying, oh, that prolonged 911 call is going to end up actually being the nail in the coffin because he searched something before the crimes and there's no way that he would have searched this specific thing if it wouldn't have been, because he knew about it, because the 911 call hadn't even been made yet. Okay, I was waiting. I even told my buddy, if he searched something so specific to the crimes before the 911 call was made, then there's really not a lot that can be, said to make me think that he's not involved in some way at this point. I have a theory that puts Bryan very much involved in the situation, but still doesn't allow him to be at the location of the crime. Because again, I don't think the Elantra has anything to honestly do with anything, just in my own personal opinion. But there's a way. There's still a way. So that being said, him searching the crimes days later is nothing, literally at all. They can't use that as some sort of guilt because millions of people across the planet were Googling the crime, especially by 11/16. That's a few days after the fact, and word had already been spread like wildfire about what had happened. So yeah. So then they say that on 11/18, he watched a YouTube video about the perfect killing machine when it came to Ted Bundy. And he also looked up a bunch of stuff from Ken Mains. There was a couple of law and crime things when it comes to the University of Idaho murders. Now, it's interesting because Ken Mains has now come out with some sort of response about so many of his videos being watched by Kohberger. So Stormos over on Twitter posted this from the Unsolved No More page that Ken Mains has. And this is his response, again, to Bryan Kohberger apparently watching a bunch of his videos about the case. He's claiming it's because he said that whoever did it was probably watching videos about it. But thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon millions of people who didn't do it were also watching videos about it. It's like one of those catch-22 things. Anyway, it states here, we've received numerous messages this morning regarding last night's Dateline episode about the Idaho murders. During the broadcast, it was revealed that according to police reports, the suspect Bryan Kohberger had watched multiple episodes of Unsolved No More, including Detective Main's series on Ted Bundy. Our video thumbnails were also shown during the segment. This revelation doesn't come as a surprise. In fact, Detective Kenneth L. Mains previously stated in one of those episodes that he believed the suspect would be watching. Additional connections between Kohberger and Unsolved No More have also come to light. Detective Mains will be releasing an official statement addressing these developments soon. Okay, so I didn't read the very last sentence of that before, or two sentences. Additional connections between Kohberger? Okay, I'm going to have to go find this. So right now it's around 11:15 a.m. on May the 12th, and it shows that on May the 11th of 2025, Ken Mains over on his Unsolved No More channel posted a video where he's claiming that he contacted Bryan Kohberger to find out some sort of answer, I guess, for why he was watching so many of his videos. Now, Bryan Kohberger is standing silent. I highly doubt he's going to break his silence for some YouTuber. Sorry, not sorry. No offense, but there's just no way that this is going to be like the one person he breaks his silence for. Now, if he was watching him simply because he's actually a fan of him, then who knows? Maybe he will, but I just highly freaking doubt it. Now, they also are claiming that they reached out to Dateline for an answer. So I'm going to watch this in a little bit today and do a recap video later to see if they did find anything out. Then they stated that within the next 6 weeks, that Kohberger either searched or saved things to his phone regarding this case over 60 times. And a random web sleuth that uses a username and no profile picture can save and do more than that in a single day about the case. So we're supposed to trip out about 6 weeks? That's 10 a week. Who cares? So then they say that on the exact same day that ISP found the DNA on the knife sheath itself, that Kohberger went on Amazon and searched for the K-bar in the sheath again. And again, it's interesting, but also his connection, he probably heard about something already. I know. Oh, she's making all these excuses. No, everything has to be done beyond a reasonable doubt. His connection to the criminology department and the Pullman Police Department, and the actuality that this was something heavily discussed in the classroom, none of this is too far-fetched or really means anything just yet. The only one that I have an issue with so far is 11:15. But then again, that was 2 days after. School had already commenced once at least. People were discussing things. So, I don't know. So then we have to remember that they then claimed that he navigated to pages that would delete Amazon purchase history. Now, I went on my live and opened my Amazon app on my phone and was looking around and could not find a single way to delete a purchase. There was just no way to do it. Now, people were in the chat saying that they were doing it on theirs. They couldn't find a way to do it. That they were on their computers. They couldn't find a way to do it. You can go in and you can clear your browsing history. You can go in and delete things off of the pull down bar where stuff starts to populate as you're typing it in. But that's not you deleting purchase history. So many people have tried to find where you delete purchase history and can't find it. So I don't know what they're going to do when it comes to proving this situation. But as far as so many of us that actually use Amazon on a daily freaking basis can tell, you can't do that. So I don't know. Okay, so then we go to 11:27. This is like the Thanksgiving break holiday. They're claiming at this point that he has now been watching a video from Dr. Grande called Echoes of Ted Bundy and a couple other different, shows about that. So then on 12/6, sometime after midnight, he apparently looks up the Amazon knife and sheath again. Now, this is where Dr. Gary pretty much shows me just how not very doctory he is with his brain. He says that the reason why Kohberger was looking this up again, the knife and the sheath together, is because he'd already decided that he had gotten away with the crimes, so he was ready to do it again. Sir, the only thing that was at the crime scene was the sheath. The sheath is not a weapon. If he had the weapon itself already and just didn't have the carrier according to the state's whole thing here, why would he need to purchase another weapon to go out and do things with whenever the only thing he was supposed to be missing was the carrier for said weapon? You can go and do all kinds of things without needing something to carry it in. Now, the comments about this were saying, well, if he had already gotten rid of it because it's a piece of evidence and he actually, planted it somewhere, threw it in a river, buried it somewhere, whatever they're claiming that he might have done with it, then of course he was going to need another one. Why would you buy it through Amazon? Some of this stuff has just got to start making more common sense. I'm telling you, if we've gone through all of this thinking that he really did know better and it turns out that he's like the water boy, I'm going to be so disappointed. So they talk about the Indiana traffic stops because of whenever they happened, but when it comes to any real, more information really being told, there's really nothing in that we hadn't already heard. But according to the timeline, on 12/15 at 2:58 in the morning, so at 3 a.m., as they're already on the way back to Pennsylvania, they're claiming that Bryan Kohberger looked up a song with the lyrics, "Something is wrong with me. I can't be who I need to be. Something is wrong with me. Will it last for eternity?" Now, I low-key feel like some type of way about this because I have gone to probably 5 Twisted shows in my life. Now, it's been a minute. It's probably been a decade since I've gone to a Twisted show. I never really was a juggalo, okay? I never really liked ICP that much. There was a lot of it I really didn't like, to be honest. But Twisted was my band, okay? They still are. I literally blast so many of the songs from their Abominations album in the car almost daily, okay? All of my kids know these songs. My 7-year-old knows these songs. Now, these aren't the songs that talk about doing things to dead bodies and stuff in a cemetery and all of the things, okay? This Abominations album was very, very mature for them. And it stuck with me all of this time. A lot of those songs really got me personally through a lot. As a matter of fact, I will link my 3 or 4 favorite songs from the Abominations album in the description box so that you guys can go and take a listen. Not just so that you guys can see the kind of songs that I listen to and like, but to see that this band, it's not really all that bad. I know a lot of people are going to go in and see a lot of their older stuff. They're definitely a taste. They're definitely a taste. You have to have the palate for it, okay? But just because you like certain songs from these bands doesn't mean that you follow a certain label. So let's just put that out there. I say all of that to say that whenever I looked these lyrics up, it came up with a completely different song. I guess because I wasn't hearing the beat, I didn't recognize this to be a Twisted song, but it is. So I put it into my community post because somebody made a comment saying, hey, I got this song from Twisted. And I was like, there's no way. I would definitely have recognized a Twisted song. But no, nay, nay, I did not. I definitely did not. And apparently neither did Google. It actually took me, I think, 4 different maneuverings of the lyrics to be able to actually pull up the right song. And yeah, they were right. It's a Twisted song called Wrong With Me. I didn't listen to the full song. I remember hearing this before. I did not re-listen to it because this isn't one of the ones that I have kept in my head as one of the ones of theirs that I like to listen to. I'm sure there's a reason for that. I don't really know the reason for that. Again, in the description box will be a link to that song as well. But if you want to just go and look at the lyrics, you can either Google them yourself or go over to the community tab because I left a comment under my post about what song this actually was with all of the lyrics. Now, again, this is the exact same day that the traffic stops happened in Indiana. This would have been about 7-ish or so hours before that first one. So this is where they're now saying that he watched a show with Ted Bundy on it in a black hoodie. This one's a little strange, and this is the only reason I say it's a little bit strange is because it does look sort of like he might be trying to mimic what he's seeing on the cover. The thumbnail has what's supposed to be Ted Bundy in like a black hoodie. Well, then right after he gets done watching it, he takes some selfies in a black hoodie. Now, without knowing about the thumbnail looking the way that it does, thumbnails are so easily changed. Okay? I could go in right now and change every single thumbnail in my video, and honestly, people probably wouldn't even notice. So I do question if this one specific video had this thumbnail originally whenever Bryan watched it, or if it was changed. Because we just don't know. Anyway, he is then taking selfies in a black hoodie. Now, I made a comment in my live that these don't really mean crap to me because there's been plenty of times where I've taken pictures of myself in a hoodie because I thought that I looked cute with the way that the hoodie was on my face and the way that my hair was doing its thing. I felt confident in the way the picture was going to look, so I took hoodie selfies. That's what I meant by I used to put on my hoodie and take cute pictures too. This doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean that I think the pictures are cute. It means I understand he probably thought that they were cute, which is the reason why he took them. Because why else do you take selfies? Because you think you're ugly? Now, again, the way that they put it to where the thumbnail has Bundy in the hoodie, and then we have these hoodie photos, it's a strange little thing, but does it mean that he was actually trying to impersonate Ted Bundy? No, not really, especially since this is the same black hoodie that we see in all of these really ridiculously blurry photos, and it's his WSU hoodie. It's a black hoodie with the WSU logo. I highly doubt he's running around and doing crazy stuff in something that has such a prominent description on it. I'm just saying. This one was a real kicker because on 12/29 at 11:53 p.m., just about what, an hour and a half or so maybe, before his entire house gets basically broken apart by the SWAT team coming in and taking over, he starts listening to a really oddly edited version of Criminal by Britney Spears. That's not the kind of Britney that I'm used to, so I'm not a fan of all that kind of stuff, but this is a very, very odd version, if I do say so myself. But that's it for the timeline that they gave us. Again, the next video that comes out is going to be all of those additional details, like stuff that Maddie's boss from the clothing store said, or stuff that they said about how the photos were apparently categorized on his phone. I wish they would have gone into some more specifics, because it could have literally been him investigating for like people that could have been suspicious. We just don't really know, because they're just giving us a bunch of cherry-picked vague details that definitely follow theme. But let me know what you guys are thinking about this Dateline special down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out, subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already, and please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.